The Mafia remains active, thousands of members still, but they are hated by many for their extortion of so-called peso, protection money from businesses.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 mafias that are still active.
Ndrangheta looked at those guys and said, hey, maybe we'd be better off taking a lower profile and not sticking out.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most powerful mafias and mafia-type organizations that are still operative today. Did you know these groups were still around? Let us know in the comments below. Number 10. The Dixie Mafia. A relative newcomer to the world of organized crime, the Dixie Mafia rose to prominence in the late 1960s.
Anything that made a dime, the Dixie Mafia was in it.
This deadly mafia network dominated until the FBI was called in to hunt them down.
Unlike other mafias, it's not an official organization, but more of a loose-knit gang of criminals, mostly white Southerners in the United States. While the Dixie Mafia was founded in Biloxi, Mississippi, they were known to operate throughout the entire American South.
What they were was a group of his handpicked from the years of 1962 to 1966, guys of 9 that he used to rob places, banks, jewelry stores, armories, any place that had big money.
Its former leader, Kirksey McCord Nix Jr., is currently serving life in prison, and many other members ended up behind bars too. The Mafia's influence has dwindled significantly since the 90s.
The Mississippi Gulf Coast was transformed. Clubs and backroom casinos were closed. Gambling was legalized. The financial source for the dark underbelly of crime shut down.
The Dixie Mafia just lost its vitality.
But some believe they're still around in a smaller capacity. Number 9. The Addams Family. Mafias aren't exclusive to Italy or the United States. In fact, most countries around the world have their own mafia-type criminal organization. One of the most powerful in the United Kingdom is the Addams Family.
We were tasked with combating those involved in the importation, wholesaling and the distribution of major quantities of drugs. Already at that stage, the Addams family name was synonymous with that kind of crime.
Known officially as the Clerkenwell Crime Syndicate, this organization was formed back in the 1980s by brothers Terry, Tommy, and Patsy Addams. Like the Dixie Mafia, the Addams family is not as big as it once was, and many key figures were imprisoned throughout the 90s and 2000s.
The police create a special task force, led by the National Crime Squad, designed to bring the three Addams brothers down at any cost.
However, they are allegedly still involved in drug trafficking and high-scale robberies, among other forms of organized crime.
We talk of gangs on the streets of London today. No, they're not gangs in this way. This was an old-school type of gang, and I don't think we'll see many, if any, like that anymore.
Number 8. The Russian Mafia. The Russian Mafia has its roots in Stalin's forced labor camps during the Soviet era, where political dissidents and criminals organized under leaders known as thieves-in-law.
Hundreds of FBI agents in New York are now devoted to fighting what one top official called an explosive growth in organized crime, fueled by the growing influence of Asian, Albanian, and Russian mobs.
By the 1980s, they had expanded into other countries, including the U.S. Also known as the Bratva, or Brotherhood, the organization took inspiration from the Italian Mafia, but had a looser hierarchical structure.
The Russian mob, based here in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, has grown into an intimidating force, a lucrative international enterprise stretching from Moscow to Israel to Thailand to the United States, blending old-fashioned brutality with high-tech skills.
It's composed of thousands of groups with an estimated 250,000 members, some with ties to Russia, others to countries that were part of the Soviet Union, such as Georgia. The high level of political corruption in Russia has allowed criminal groups to prosper. Their activities include human trafficking, racketeering, extortion, drug trafficking, and more.
The United States for them is not a major center of operations. For them, it's a good place to bank. It's a good place to keep money in case things get really bad. But their interest and their attention is still focused on the power politics of Russia.
Number 7. The Irish Mob. The Irish Mafia is one of the most infamous in the world. It got its start in the late 19th century with Irish-American street gangs, who vied for control of New York with Italian and Jewish organizations.
For let it be known that the hand that tries to strike us from this land shall be swiftly cut down. And may the Christian Lord guide my hand against your Roman popery. Prepare to receive the true Lord.
They have since become one of the most widespread criminal syndicates in the United States and Canada, with cities like Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Cleveland, and Montreal linked to mob activity. Boston has hosted the Winter Hill Gang, an offshoot of the Irish mob that was once run by the notorious Whitey Bulger.
Bulger eventually took over the Winter Hill Gang in Somerville from Howie Winter. And that's when Bulger and his cohort Stephen Flemmi moved their headquarters from Somerville to Lancaster Street in the North End.
This gang once had enormous influence within the FBI, as Bulger was in cahoots with the corrupt agent John Connolly. They're associated with a variety of crimes, such as assaults, murder, counterfeiting, drug trafficking, illegal gambling, and money laundering.
This is what it's like being a mobster. You fend for yourself and you're constantly starting over.
Number 6. The Jewish Mafia. Like the Irish mob, the Jewish Mafia got its start on the streets of New York City in the late 19th century.
Jews gathered in what we call ethnic enclaves, where they would be attracted to places where they had relatives, where they had friends from the same area of the country they were from, and where there were jobs.
They eventually grew and flourished in the Prohibition era, as illegal bootlegging became increasingly lucrative. The Mafia saw its heyday from the 30s to the 60s, when the Jewish mob allied with the Italian-American Mafia to form the National Crime Syndicate.
So at that point, you can see that at every enterprise that he gets involved in, he's got to have an Italian partner.
Involved were some of the most notorious mobsters in American history, including Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, and Mickey Cohen.
He was always in some kind of trouble, but the law couldn't make anything stick. So the government went after his finances, just like they did with Cohen's idol, Al Capone.
I am willing to save my country the expense of a trial and plead guilty.
The Jewish Mafia has been closely linked with the Russian mob in recent years, and they have a heavy presence in the Brighton Beach area of Brooklyn. Number 5. The Albanian Mafia. Like the Russian Mafia, the Albanian Mafia isn't a cohesive organization, but a loose collection of Albanian criminal operations. Involved over a dozen mafia families who are allied with powerful syndicates, including the Sicilian Mafia and the Sinaloa cartel. Through their connections, the Albanian Mafia controls much of the European drug trade.
A British government report in 2020 found the cocaine market here is dominated by Albanian gangs.
In fact, the U.S. State Department considers Albania the mainstay of organized crime worldwide and the main points of drug trafficking, weapons, and immigrants and counterfeit goods.
Is this what you're seeing time and again increasingly now, like other forces, that the Albanian organised criminal gangs are moving into these areas?
No, they are. They certainly seem to be on the up. They seem the dominant ones at the moment.
Some have also linked the country's current Prime Minister, Edi Rama, to activities of the Albanian Mafia.
In Albania, unfortunately, it started with the local level, mayors of towns, of cities, connected straight to organized crime, elected because organized crime is backing them, and you have criminals themselves getting elected.
However, the FBI does not consider them as sophisticated as other organizations due to their clan-like structure. Number 4. The Five Families. The Bonanos, the Colombos, the Gambinos, the Genovese, the Lucchese's. Chances are that you've heard these names at some point, especially if you live in the general New York City area, or if you watch a lot of mob fiction.
The Gambino family was once among the most powerful criminal organizations in the U.S., but federal prosecutions in the 1980s and 90s sent its top leaders to prison.
They are collectively known as the Five Families, and they have an unbreakable hold on the New York City underworld. The Five Families were formed by Italian-American mobster Salvatore Maranzano in 1931, and are now controlled by the Commission, a governing mafia body consisting of the major bosses.
It was for money, it was for greed, it was for women, it was for fast cars, it was being part of a society, part of a brotherhood.
Each family is given a specific territory within New York, although their presence is also felt in states like Florida and Nevada. Number 3. The Sicilian Mafia. There is no mafia without the Sicilian Mafia. Also called Cosa Nostra, meaning our thing, the Sicilian Mafia originated the very idea and structure of the modern-day mob,
which began on the Italian island of Sicily in the 1800s. The main group, Cosa Nostra, which means our thing, slowly, bit by bit, infiltrating society.
Its roots lie in western Sicily in the late 1800s, but it gained widespread recognition when Sicilians emigrated to the U.S. in the early 20th century. Nowadays, the Sicilian Mafia specifically refers to the syndicate that is still operating in Sicily, composed of about 100 families.
The Mafia remains active, thousands of members still, but they are hated by many for their extortion of so-called peso, protection money from businesses.
They're particularly active in the city of Palermo. While they've lost ground in the drug trade to the Ndrangheta, they still run powerful protection rackets and have been linked to a number of powerful politicians in Italy.
The Mafia still has a strong presence in Sicily, even though their methods have evolved.
Number 2. Yakuza. Contrary to popular belief, Yakuza is not the criminal organization itself, but the title of its members.
The Yakuza has dominated Japan's criminal underworld for over a century through a quiet code of brutality, extortion rackets, and gambling dens.
It's the equivalent to our use of gangster or mobster. In reality, the Yakuza belong to various Japanese crime syndicates or clans. Like many mafias on this list, these clans are not as powerful as they once were, and it's believed that the height of the Yakuza was in the 1960s.
I would say that there's a time that they were a necessary evil. It's a kind of crime that people hate. Theft, robbery, street crimes, people breaking into your house. The Yakuza were good at suppressing that.
But the crime syndicate continues to operate with over 12,000 alleged members and 3 principal clans. The largest, wealthiest, and most powerful is Yamaguchi-gumi, which consists of over 8,000 Yakuza and operates out of the city of Kobe.
I would describe the Mafia as a bit like cockroaches. They're very resistant.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Ndrangheta.
And that when we talk about the Ndrangheta, we are not talking about one unique strategy. We are talking about each clan that can do different things.
While pop culture has propped up the Sicilian Mafia, it's Ndrangheta that has the true stranglehold on illicit mob activity. Like the Cosa Nostra, Ndrangheta started in Italy, specifically in the region of Calabria, before emigration made their enterprise more powerful and widespread.
The Ndrangheta has become the wealthiest of the Italian mafias. It's considered the most far-reaching in terms of international links, and that together makes it the more powerful.
While the organization partakes in all sorts of criminal activity, a large chunk of their revenue comes through drug trafficking, which they conduct with the help of powerful cartels. This enterprise has made Ndrangheta incredibly rich, and in 2010, it was estimated that their earnings accounted for 3% of Italy's entire GDP.
To imagine how big they are, take the annual revenue of Starbucks and McDonald's, put it together, more than $50 billion. That's what we're talking about.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.